The Battle of Waddams Grove, fought on June 18, 1832, stands as a defining yet frequently overlooked episode in the Black Hawk War. While often eclipsed in general histories by the initial rout at Stillman's Run or the climactic massacre at Bad Axe, this engagement, also known as the Battle of Yellow Creek, offers a singular lens through which to examine the granular realities of frontier warfare in the Jacksonian era. For a documentary production, the battle provides a compact, intense narrative arc, a daring raid, a relentless pursuit through unforgiving weather, a tactical gamble involving a rare bayonet charge, and a bloody, inconclusive aftermath that was spun into a propaganda victory. To understand Waddams Grove, one must first grasp the volatility of 1832. The conflict was not a war of armies in the European sense, but a chaotic series of raids, panics, and punitive expeditions. It was sparked by the return of Black Hawk, Makataimeshekiakiak, and his British band across the Mississippi River. Their goal was to reclaim their ancestral village of Saukenuk, near present-day Rock Island, and plant corn, asserting that the Treaty of 1804, which had ceded their lands, was invalid and fraudulent. The settler response was driven by a potent mix of fear and economic anxiety. The region was the epicenter of the U.S.-led mining industry, a rough-and-tumble frontier economy centered on Galena, Illinois. The presence of 1,000 Native Americans, including 500 warriors, threatened the stability of this extraction economy. Following the humiliation of the Illinois militia at the Battle of Stillman's Run on May 14, 1832, where a disorganized force fled from a smaller native party, the frontier was gripped by terror. It is within this atmosphere of humiliation and the thirst for redemption that the Battle of Waddams Grove must be situated. Visualizing the battlefield requires an understanding of the unique geology of northwestern Illinois. Unlike the flattened prairies to the south and east, this region lies within the driftless area, a zone bypassed by the last continental glaciers. The terrain is characterized by rugged, rolling hills, deep ravines, and limestone bluffs. Creeks like the Yellow Creek, here the battle was fought, cut through the landscape, creating steep banks and fostering dense thickets of underbrush and timber in the valleys. For the documentary filmmaker, this terrain is a character in itself. It is not the open plain of the cinematic West. It is a claustrophobic, vertical landscape where visibility is limited and ambushes easy. The thicket where the Sauk warriors took their stand was not merely a patch of bushes, but a defensive fortification provided by nature, dense, thorny, and impenetrable to the eye, neutralizing the militia's advantage in long-range musketry. Atmospherics play a crucial role in the narrative of Waddams Grove. Historical accounts emphasize that the pursuit and battle took place during a period of intense weather. Stevenson's men marched through pounding rain in the pre-dawn hours of June 18th. The roar of rain would have masked the sound of movement, allowing for close approaches, but also hindering communication. Black powder firearms are notoriously unreliable in wet weather. Paper cartridges get soggy, priming pans get wet. The reliance on bayonets and knives in the final stage of the battle may have been dictated as much by the failure of firearms due to rain as by tactical choice. The militia tracked their quarry through mud and slick limestone, adding an element of physical exhaustion to the psychological stress of the pursuit. Captain James W. Stevenson is the protagonist of the American perspective, but he fits the mold of the anti-hero. Born in Virginia and raised in Illinois, he was a man of the frontier elite, ambitious, volatile, and politically connected. In 1825, years before the war, Stevenson was indicted for the murder of Daniel D. Smith in Edwardsville. Smith was stabbed in the neck during a tavern brawl involving Stevenson and other prominent men. Although he never went to trial, this incident reveals a man familiar with intimate violence and quick to anger. As a lead mining magnate and a militia officer, Stevenson carried the burden of the Stillman's Run disgrace. His actions at Waddams Grove specifically the aggressive, repeated charges against a concealed enemy, suggest a commander desperate to prove his bravery and erase the stigma of cowardice attached to the militia. He was not fighting for territory, he was fighting for reputation. The Native American force at Waddams Grove is often identified simply as Sauk, but the reality of the British band was more complex. Black Hawk's followers included Sauk, Fox, Meskwaki, and Kickapoo warriors, along with some Potawatomi and Ho-Chunk allies. By mid-June, Black Hawk's strategy had shifted from a show of force to survival. The main body of the band was hiding in the swamps of southern Wisconsin near Lake Koshikonong, starving and encircled. The warriors encountered by Stevenson were a raiding party. Their objective was not conquest, but logistics. They were stealing horses and food to support the non-combatants and to provide mounts for warriors to screen the main body's retreat. These warriors were masters of asymmetric warfare. They utilized these scatter and ambush tactics that had devastated American forces in other skirmishes. At Waddams Grove, they did not stand in the open. They lured the militia into a kill zone in the timber, negating the Americans' numbers and firepower. The immediate cause of the Battle of Waddams Grove was a property crime with strategic implications. On the night of June 17, 1832, a party of warriors infiltrated the perimeter of Apple River Fort near present-day Elizabeth, Illinois. In a stealth operation that highlights their skill, they stole approximately 12 horses from the stockade. This was a significant blow. In the frontier war, horses were the primary assets for mobility. Stealing them denied the militia the ability to patrol and enhanced the raiders' capacity to strike further afield. The stealing was discovered the following morning, triggering an immediate response from the local military command. Captain Stevenson was in the vicinity, likely at Galena or moving between the forts. Upon hearing of the theft, he organized a pursuit force. The composition of this force is variously reported as 12 to 20 men, a mix of his own Galena company and volunteers from Apple River Fort. This was a detecting party, a rapid reaction force designed to track and engage. Unlike the slow-moving columns of General Atkinson's regulars, Stevenson's group traveled light. They set out before dawn, tracking the stolen horses through the mud and rain. The trail led eastward towards the dense cover of Yellow Creek. The pursuit covered roughly 12 to 20 miles. The militia finally sighted the raiding party in an open area near Yellow Creek, roughly 12 miles east of Kellogg's Grove. The behavior of the Native Americans at this moment is instructive. They did not panic. Upon seeing the militia, they abandoned the open ground and rushed for cover in a wooded area near the creek. This was a calculated maneuver. They surrendered the initiative of movement to gain the advantage of position. By entering the thicket, they forced the militia to come to them. Stevenson's men occupied a rise, identified in historical accounts as West Point Hill. From this vantage point, they could see the enemy entering the brush, but could not effectively engage them with rifle fire due to the density of the cover and the distance. The tactical dilemma faced by Stevenson was acute.
Stevenson ordered his men to dismount, leaving a few men, or perhaps tying the horses to secure their mounts. The militia advanced on foot. They crawled down the hill to get within range, utilizing the terrain to mask their approach. Upon reaching the edge of the thicket, the militia fired a volley into the brush. Silence followed. The Sauk warriors did not return fire. This discipline is remarkable. They refused to give away their specific locations until the enemy was vulnerable. Interpreting the silence perhaps as a sign that the enemy had fled or was suppressed, Stevenson ordered a charge. The militia rushed into the dense undergrowth, the trap springs. As they breached the timber, the Sauk opened fire at point-blank range. Stephen P. Howard was struck and killed instantly. The shock of the volley and the loss of a comrade forced the militia to recoil and retreat back to the open ground. Stevenson rallied his men. The fact that he could convince a group of volunteer militia, who had just seen a man killed, to charge again into a blind ambush speaks to his charisma or the desperate adrenaline of the moment. He ordered a bayonet charge. This is a critical detail for the documentary script. Bayonet charges were standard in Napoleonic warfare for regulars, but rare for frontier militia, who favored the rifle, which often lacked bayonet lugs, over the musket. Stevenson's men, however, appear to have been equipped for this, or they used knives as surrogates. The second clash. The militia surged back into the thicket. The fighting devolved into a bayonet and knife fight. In the chaos, Private Thomas Sublette encountered a Sauk warrior. In a visceral moment of hand-to-hand combat, Sublette stabbed the warrior in the neck with his bayonet, killing him. However, the militia took another heavy blow. George Ames was killed during this second assault. Again, the militia was forced to pull back. With 2 men dead and the enemy still entrenched, a rational commander might have broken off the engagement. Stevenson did not. He ordered a third charge. The climax. The militia charged a third time. In the ensuing exchange of fire and steel, Captain Stevenson was struck in the chest by a musket ball. The wound was severe, a through-and-through or a lodged ball that would plague him for the rest of his short life. Almost simultaneously, Michael Lovell was killed. With their commander down and 3 men dead, nearly 25% of the force, the militia's offensive capability was shattered. They retrieved their wounded captain and withdrew from the field. The loss of Stephen P. Howard, George Ames, and Michael Lovell was devastating for the small community of Galena. These were not anonymous soldiers. They were neighbors, miners, and distinct personalities in the settlement. Their deaths would be mourned and memorialized, fueling the desire for further retribution. Captain Stevenson's survival was precarious. A chest wound in 1832 was often a death sentence due to infection or internal bleeding. His recovery would be slow, and his return to Galena as a wounded hero became a centerpiece of the local war narrative. On June 20, 1832, the Galena newspaper published the first accounts of the battle. The coverage was pivotal. It framed the engagement not as a tactical defeat, which, given the retreat and failure to recover the horses, it arguably was, but as a heroic stand. The narrative focused on the daring and desperate courage of Stevenson's men. The report of the scalps and the heavy fighting served a strategic purpose. It restored public confidence. After the shame of Stillman's Run, where men fled without firing a shot, Waddams Grove proved that the Illinois militia could stand toe-to-toe with the British band. It transformed the militia from a laughingstock into a force of vengeance. 2 days after the battle, Colonel James M. Strode led a larger force back to Yellow Creek to bury the dead. The bodies of Howard, Ames, and Lovell were recovered and interred. They were later moved to the Kellogg's Grove Monument, where they rest today. This ritual of retrieval and burial was crucial for community closure and reinforced the sanctity of the settler's sacrifice. While a small skirmish, Waddams Grove, along with the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, fought by Henry Dodge 2 days prior, signaled a shift in the war. The June raids were the high watermark of Black Hawk's offensive capability. The aggressive responsive leaders like Stevenson and Dodge checked these raids, protecting the mining settlements and buying time for the U.S. Army to mobilize the overwhelming force that would eventually crush the British band at Bad Axe in August. A key visual and narrative theme for the script should be the anachronism of the bayonet charge. In the dense forests of North America, the tomahawk and the rifle were king. Stevenson's order to fix bayonets was a throwback to formal European warfare, perhaps reflecting his own aspirations to military gentility or sheer desperation. The juxtaposition of this formal military maneuver against the guerrilla tactics of the Sauk in a muddy, overgrown thicket provides a compelling visual conflict. The battle illustrates the self-perpetuating cycle of frontier violence. The raid on Apple River was a response to settler encroachment and hunger. The pursuit was a response to the theft. The battle led to deaths, which led to the taking of scalps, which led to further calls for extermination in the press. There is no clean victory here, only a deepening of the hatred that would culminate in the slaughter at Bad Axe.